Hey guys, it's Tiffany, and we are in our second class for the beekeeping apprenticeship. We're going to have a lot of fun today. If you didn't get a chance to watch the first class, you can watch it anytime. Beekeeping information, it builds on each other. And so you're going to get little segments of about 6 topics, no matter who your teacher is or what videos you're watching. Beekeeping education is all very similar. We're talking about nutrition and health. We're talking about landscape. We're talking about queen rearing. We're talking about pests and disease, and it's all very similar. So what I'm trying to lead you through a progression, but don't feel like if you're lost or if you're coming in late, feel like you can always catch up with the last class. So today we're going to talk about life cycle and jobs of the honeybee. I have some videos. We're going to talk about how the bees communicate. I'm going to show you my process for beeswax and propolis. And we are going to talk about swarms and reproduction because I'm sure that we're going to be getting some more swarm calls. I got my first swarm call of the season on Valentine's Day. So it was really fun to go out and pick up some bees on a mailbox on Valentine's Day. And for those of you that don't know, Saint Valentine is also associated with as one of the saints of beekeeping. So it was just kind of a special little moment. This week, if you want to come keep bees with me, just let me know. I'm going to be setting swarm traps with our employee, and we are going to be in Wednesday in Cross Plains from 2 to 5, and then we're going to be in Buffalo Gap area on Friday morning. I'm thinking 9 or 10. I'm waiting to see what the weather is doing. I want to be able to feed the bees too, so you'll be able to get your hands in some hives. So if either of those times work for you guys and you want to join me, the more time you can get your hands in hives and practice holding bees and practice looking at frames and seeing, what's going on. It's just so much better in person. It's great to keep up with the videos online, but I highly encourage you guys to take full advantage of coming to work bees with me. Okay, so we're going to talk about the life cycle and the jobs of the honeybee as a superorganism. Um, this is a little review of last week. If you haven't really thought about why you're a beekeeper, I want you to journal about it. I want you to contemplate. I want you to start to understand what's going on with you because I think being a beekeeper is so much more than being a beekeeper. It's so much more than gathering honey for your family. It's so much more than even helping our gardens and our foodway systems. And so it's a very personal decision, but I want to just encourage you to keep that top of mind while you're doing this. And a quick review for apiary setup. I just left this slide in here in case anybody was still having questions or wanted to review or look at pictures of their apiary setup. We don't have a whole lot of people with us live today, so if you have questions after you're watching the replay, feel free to send them to me. It's no problem. But this should just be a review of what we looked at last week. Um, and then some trivia from last week. Do you guys remember who these people are, what this is? If not, you can go back and watch the replay, right? So we want to kind of build the information that we're getting here. So the hive is a superorganism. It functions like one unit, right? And so when we're doing our mite checks, right, something that really helped me start to do mite checks was understanding it's kind of like clipping off a fingernail or the ends of your hair. It's a piece of the superorganism that is eventually going to die, right, within the 6 weeks of their lifespan, and they are kind of sacrificing their lives for the greater good. So when we're doing mite checks, we're taking a small sample to see how infested is this colony, if at all, right? So you think about it like a superorganism. They're all working together. You're not thinking about one individual bee. Um, the queen is kind of like the reproductive system. The workers are like the immune system, right? They're bringing in the food. They're taking care of the health of the hive. They're choosing specific herbs or plants to be able to bring in propolis and the medicinal properties from the trees and the nectar. All of that is going to help with their immune system. If they're bringing in poison, toxins type stuff, right, the whole hive is going to be unhealthy. The drones are the genetic contribution. And Jacqueline Freeman says there's so much more. If you get into Jacqueline Freeman's work, she says that they are the shamans of the hive, that there's a spiritual meaning beyond genetic contribution. So she's kind of a fun one to read. And then the hive is just the body structure, the bones, right? So a healthy colony is going to act as one. So if anything's wrong with the colony, everybody's on board to fix it. Sometimes that means that they need a new queen. Sometimes that means they mean different forage or nutrition. It can mean different things, but everybody is acting as a superorganism unit. We can stand to learn a lot from the bees. The honeybee life cycle, all bees go through 4 stages. They're first an egg, and then they are a larva, and then a pupa, and then an adult. This math is something that will serve you so well, because when you start to look at frames, right, here's the actual, what you're actually seeing here. There's a baby egg, it turns into a larva here, right? And so then you can see it turns into a pupa, and then they'll cap the cell, and then the baby bee will hatch or emerge is the proper term. But if you know that it's going to take a queen 16 days to emerge, or a worker 21 days to emerge, or a drone 24 days to emerge, you're going to be able to look at a frame and tell how long ago was a queen here, right? What's going on based on this math. So this time represents the total days from the egg to the time that the bee emerges, not from when the cell is capped. And so they're capped a little bit earlier for queens, a little bit later for drones. Okay, this is a cool video from Nat Geo that shows you just that process.
Here is a bee egg as it hatches into a larva.
Can you hear that? Kayla, would you send me a note? Are you getting the
Those newly
video
hatched larvae
sound?
swim around their cells, feeding on the liquid food that nurse bees secrete for them. Then their head and their legs start to differentiate as they transform into pupae. Here's that same pupation process seen from above with varroa mites running around in the cells. Next, the tissue reorganizes in their body and the pigment slowly develops in their eyes. In the last step, their skin shrivels up and they sprout hair.
Cool, huh? Okay. Like going within the, I'm gonna have to do this to get out of that slide. There we go. Okay. There you go. So the queen, she can lay up to 1,000, 2,000 eggs per day during her high season. That's what she looks like. And so in addition to laying eggs, she's going to produce the pheromones, the smells that make the colony know where to go. Her health and her presence signals that all is well to the bees. And so when you open, a colony that's working with a working queen that's healthy, everything is kind of like on track. They're doing something, you're interrupting them, they're looking at you. It's not mass chaos, right? A queenless colony that has nothing to defend, it looks, it feels, it smells, it sounds totally different than a queen right colony. Her presence also prevents workers from raising new queens. And she's not in charge. The worker bees are telling her, lay a boy egg here, lay a girl egg here. You need to eat now. And so the circle of bees that follow her around, that kind of follow her in a circle shape, are called her retinue. This is just some more videos. I thought we could show the queen there. I hope you can see my cursor there, but that's a good shot of a queen wandering around. And so she's walking on capped brood there. And this is one from Texas Bee Works. It's kind of fun. It's just a short, there's a series of Can You Find the Queen Bee? So we'll watch it and you'll see for yourself, and she'll circle it for you if you're having a hard time with it. But it's good practice. It's good skills. So see if you can see her first. And there's a circle. And see if you can see her in this next one. Here's a third one. Okay, so let me know how you did. If you haven't heard piping before, this is another thing to keep your ears on for when you're working with bees. If you hear piping, sometimes a virgin queen will do this when she's the first one to emerge, and she's letting everybody know that she's there and she's going to go ahead and kill her sisters or the other queens that were being developed at the same time so that she is the only queen there. But this is what it sounds like when they are piping.
She's a virgin queen. That's what she's
Can you hear that?
piping.
It's so exciting when you hear that. I don't know why. And then another thing I wanted to point out about queens is they faint sometimes. So if you guys are coming with me to mark the queens that we're breeding this year, what we'll do is we'll trap them in a little cage on the comb, and then we'll use like a paint marker to dab on the top of her thorax. I haven't had any fainting queens. I hope I don't because I don't want to hurt them. But here's what it looks like. It looks totally dead.
So here you see a queen. She's a new queen. We just marked her. When I picked her up, she fainted. And many people think they just spontaneously die. She's been out for a few minutes now. But if you just leave them on the top bars, they slowly come back to. The nurse bees, her retinue, are tending to her. But you can see her abdomen is starting to pulse again. She's starting to move some legs. But it's just people call it fainting queens. Every now and then when you pick them up, they just act like they're dead. I don't know why. Well, they're gonna drag her in. There she goes. Here's that same queen just minutes later. You can see she is moving around the comb. The workers are still tending to her. When they rolled, she got a little bit more blue on the side of her, like I would rather not have, but she looks fine.
And maybe that's why she fainted. Too much paint.
Just a fainting queen.
So, um, that's a little bit about the queen. We're going to do a deeper dive into the queen next week because I want everybody to be able to make their own queens. That's a skill that I wish I had been taught earlier, because you usually need one. At some point in your beekeeping journey, you're going to need to have a queen on hand or learn how to make one. You don't want to be kind of stuck having to buy queens all the time. You want the advantage of buying queens because you want new genetics, because you want to introduce new genes to your apiary, to your county. But otherwise, if you're kind of in emergency mode and you just have a couple colonies and you're having to buy queens after this big investment, um, that can be kind of a bummer, right? So I want to teach you guys more about that sooner than later, and we're going to start that process next week. Also, the United States Department of Agriculture offers research data every year for honey production, and the prices of everything. So for example, 2024, so the 2025 survey just came out, which marks 2024. And so we're a little behind in the data, but 2024, I think that it was $226 million were made pollinating, right? So this is the commercial beekeepers that report that the USDA keeps track of. They've made, over $200 million with pollination services. And in that same report, it shows you that the average queen price was $18. That feels really inaccurate. The queen prices that I see are more like $45, $55. I know a couple people are getting upwards of 100, and it just depends on what they're charging. But you can go back to some of these industry standards that may be fine for the nation, may be different in your area, right? Okay, so there's a couple of beekeeping terms I've got highlighted in yellow for you. The worker bees, right? They're going to live 6 weeks in the summer and 4 months in the winter, give or take. They change jobs as they age, so they just get to graduate as they go along. And this jobs by age process is called polyethism, not polytheism, right? Polyethism, and they all go through the same process. So I have a couple videos I'm going to show you of these different types of activities. But for when they're first born, they're going to clean the cell around them, and then they're going to move into being a nurse. So they're going to feed the baby bees and do the cleaning and feeding. A little bit later, you're going to see that they're building wax. Not all of them build wax. They're going to be receiving nectar, taking pollen off, using that to feed and make bee bread and other things in the hive. Then they're going to graduate from being the house bees to the outside bees. So from guarding the entrance, they'll start guarding the entrance, be the bouncer bees, and then they'll go out and be the forager bees. So they start inside, and then a couple weeks later they move outside, right? Another term here is trophallaxis, and this is when they have the mouth-to-mouth exchange of basically nectar between the bees. And so they're doing trophallaxis, like one bee will go out, get the nectar, come back in, give the sister bee the nectar, she'll go back into the hive and distribute it how it's supposed to go. It's not just food distribution though. There's chemical cues going on. They're talking. There's chemical cues about where did they get the nectar source. There's hormonal signals. There's information about the queen. There's a social cohesion, right? So if a bee drifts over from a different colony and she's bringing food, she's going to be more likely to be accepted and let in the doors than if she didn't bring food. So there's a lot going on with trophallaxis that is beyond just a simple food exchange, right? Okay, so here's a couple of videos I thought we could look at. They're short, but this is a nurse bee.
This worker just returned from the field with a fresh load of bright orange pollen. Another worker is taking some of the pollen, which she will use to feed the next generation of worker bees.
Okay, that was shorter than I thought. And then here's another one. It just, when you're holding a frame, notice these activities, like be enchanted by it. So there's one that she's feeding a larva. Can you see the larva? Oh my gosh, that's not what I wanted to do, but can you see the larva in there? She's feeding them. Okay. Sorry guys, that's gonna go on nonstop until I turn that off. All right, and then here is an undertaker bee. So the undertaker bees, they take their dead out. So it's part of the natural cleaning of the hive. So she has to have graduated. She has to be at least more than a couple weeks old because she can fly outside of the colony. And so this is just an example. So what's crazy is we've observed that they have different moods and personality styles. Some of the undertaker bees will just thump them out. Some of them will fly them off to a different area. Some of them will line them up. So it's very interesting to start to get to know the personality of your colony and not just treat them like they are commercial livestock that are there to give you things, right? Like you want to understand the consciousness and the personality of your individual colony. It's really cool. It's really, really cool. Okay, the jobs of the drone. Yep, the drones are the male bees. They're the big ones. They're the boy bees. They have big, huge eyes. That's how you can really tell it's not the queen, right? You'll see the drone and you'll think, oh, I saw the queen. But the drones have those big, huge eyes. They do not forage. They do not sting. They do not build a comb. They exclusively mate. And then in the fall, it's really sad. The girl bees will start kicking out the boy bees. They're not allowed to overwinter and eat the honey sources that they've stored up. So I really hate when I start seeing that. They're also kind of interesting because they can come and go in any colony. So the drones can hang out here and sit on the couch and eat the potato chips, and then they can fly over here and hang out in this colony and eat the potato chips. It's kind of interesting. I'm going to show you the famous mating flight video. It's just, I think, a minute or so long. And then I also want to give a nod to my friend Dodie Stillman for all of her work with drone congregation areas. She started mapping these areas in Texas alongside Dr. Mahood, or is it Dr. Julia Mahood? Sorry, I don't recall if she has a doctorate. But they have an entire website with the drone mapping areas. And so what's so cool about drone congregation areas is a bunch of drones will year after year, generation after generation, without talking to each other because they die off every year, right? They'll congregate in the same area. And so there's a lot of theories on, is it an electromagnetic pulse? Is there a field? Like, why are they doing this? There's one DCA, drone congregation area, that has been studied since the 1700s in England. It's the same spot. So Dodie came out to my property last year during West Texas Bee School and offered like an opportunity for people to come watch her find a DCA. And so she does this with a camera drone, right? And so we get queen mandibular pheromone, we stick it on the end of the drone camera, we sail it up in the air, we make it smell like, hey, we've got a queen flying around, and the boy bees come, and that's how you know you've got a spot. You need to go back a second time and confirm it. But I have some cool footage of my property on our YouTube channel that shows where that drone congregation area is. And so I know that I have a couple of natural DCAs, right? I know that year after year, the boy bees are going to go to those spots. So I know I have an area where I can create a mating apiary where I can have a successful queen rearing spot on our property, right? So let's see. I mentioned to you Jacqueline Freeman's work. She has a couple of books that I really enjoy. They're not for everyone. They're not very sciencey. They're more on the kind of hippie side of things. But the first one is Song of Increase, and her second one is great. I'm going to ask her to be involved with some of the projects we're doing. But she calls the drones the holiest of beings. Interesting thought. Here's the mating flight if you haven't seen it.
Willkommen bei der Posten. Das sieht man. Ciao.
During the mating ceremony. When the queen returns from her maiden flight, she keeps 5 million sperms in her sperm bag.
All right. So I think I know how I can set my slides up so I don't have to keep doing this each time. But we used to think that the queen went on one mating flight and that she had 12 drones to mate with. And recent research shows that no, she can mate with up to 50 drones, and that she's going on maybe a couple of different mating flights depending on weather. So if it's super gross out, she may need a week to get through some of the weather conditions to get successfully mated. Um, so it's a really delicate time, right? Maybe you have a queen that's gone on her mating flight and come back. You're not sure, is she a virgin queen? Is she mated and not laying yet? And you don't want to disturb that process. Bob Benny's work also taught us that basically, if you have a queen that's mated, let her lay for a couple of weeks before you quickly try to take her out of that colony and sell her as a mated queen. You're going to have more success, or your clients are going to have more success if you have a queen that is doing her job, that's in the motion, that isn't just like quickly mated and quickly turned over. We're not about fast paced agriculture. This is beekeeping, and we have to go at their rhythm and honor really what's best for them. Otherwise, we're all failing, right? Okay, section 2 is about communication through dancing and pheromones. So in your bee history notes, you need to know who this guy is. He's Carl von Frisch. Sorry, my video there. He won the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine in 1973 for some of his discoveries about animal behavior. He's the guy that taught us that bees can see color, including ultraviolet, and he taught us about their bees' sense of smell. He taught us about their advanced communication networks. And really, what he's known for is this waggle dance. There's more than just the waggle dance, right? But the bees communicate through movement. The waggle dance this is what it looks like. The bee will, where do I want to start? Okay, let's go. This bee, she's coming in and she waggles down the center line. She's telling you on the center line, the plants are that way. And then she's going to make a loop and she's going to say, let me say it again for the people in the back. The plants are that way, right? And then she's going to make a figure 8 and come back at it again and keep telling you that the plants are that way. That's where we want to forage. And she does this at an angle to where the sun is so that the bees know it's this far, it's going to take us this long, and this is what we're looking for. It's an incredibly sophisticated communication system. So they also go through a democratic process. So if there's a couple different dances being offered to the hive, the colony is going to decide on a couple different factors. Hey, we're going to go with this one. This is the reason that we choose this one collectively. We see all the options. We're taking a vote. We're going with this way, right? They're not arguing on social media about who's right or wrong, or they just make the best decision for the colony and they go forward. You want to read Tom Seeley's book called Honeybee Democracy. In the intro, he talks about how the human brain is 3 pounds, right? And that the colony itself is about 3 pounds, and all of the democratic processes, and likens it to the human brain. His work is really unparalleled in beekeeping. So any chance you can get to watch his videos, read his books, download them on Audible, you're in good hands when you're listening to Dr. Seeley's work. So there's the waggle dance, but there's also the round dance. And so the round dance is used for food that's kind of close and they're not giving a direction. They're just like, hey, I got food, let's go find it, right? And then the waggle dance is saying like, all right, we need to be specific about our flight instructions. Okay, so here's a video. Let's see.
Sometimes they can fly more than 6
Okay, this one's just a little less than 3 minutes, so hang in there on this one because it's a good one.
kilometers to get enough nectar and pollen back, because they need a plentiful and vast supply. It's a huge problem, and to solve that problem requires massive organization.
But the bees have an almost incredible solution. Adam has set up an observation hive. It's completely dark inside, and so infrared cameras reveal what's going on.
There's all sorts of behaviors going on. Initially, it looks very chaotic. It looks like bees are everywhere. But you can see some vibrations going on and some movements that are actually part of a very sophisticated communication system.
The bees perform a striking behavior that's key to solving the problem of gathering enough food. It's called the waggle dance.
The waggle dance is a very sophisticated way of directing foragers towards nectar in the environment. So it's sat nav for bees. It's telling them where to go.
The waggle dance isn't just for show. This bee has found a good source of food, and she's performing a set of very precise movements to tell the others exactly where to find it.
And it tells them the direction and the distance of the nectar. The best way to understand how the waggle dance actually works is to get up high, because then you can get a view of the landscape in which the bees are operating.
This church tower gives Adam a bee's eye view of the landscape. From up here, it's easy to see where the sun lies over the landscape and where it would be if it were on the horizon.
So you imagine the sun drops down to the horizon. That's the line the bees have to follow, and that's what the waggle dance is doing. It's giving them direction.
One of the dancing bees in the hive was waggling at an angle of 5 degrees. So if this tower were a massive beehive, the waggle dance would be telling us that the nectar is 5 degrees from the relative position of the sun, somewhere in that direction.
But they can also advertise distance, because the duration of that waggle run, that central component, tells the bees how far away the resource is. The closer it is, the shorter the waggle run.
Okay. So a book that is great for that is The Biology of the Honeybee. It's Winston's book, and it's really dry, but it's really good biology, and it will give you such a good foundation. You will know what you're doing in the beehive. So I highly recommend that you guys read The Biology of the Honeybee by Winston. It's older, it's yellow, it's very well worn in my library. But he goes into great detail about the waggle dance and the direction and all that it conveys. This is just scratching the surface. Here's another short one that's a little bit easier to watch. There she goes.
Honeybees have some fascinating abilities, among them being able to communicate by performing a unique dance. It informs hive mates where a newly discovered food source is located. Every cycle of this waggle dance roughly describes the shape of the figure 8. Let's rewind and look in more detail. The bee only waggles on a part of its route, the straight run, indicated here by the waved line. The secret lies in the direction of the straight run, or to be more precise, in the angle between the straight run and the perpendicular, which in this case is 90 degrees to the left. This tells the other bees that food is available 90 degrees to the left of the sun. If the angle is 60 degrees to the right, they'll be flying 60 degrees to the right of the sun.
Isn't that cool? This is the round dance. So this is the one that's like, hey, we've got food. It's within what, 50 meters? And so you can just see, you might see that and think, oh, that's a waggle dance or something's wrong, or there's like you might be alerted to it. But this is what the round dance looks like. And you can see the queen over there too. But I just want to give you a visual on the differences because it is so exciting when you see it in the colony. So I do have some personal videos that I couldn't quickly access. So I'm going to work on updating my slides for the next round so you have some of my personal ones that I've seen. In addition to dancing, like dancing is a way of communication, so are the pheromones. They have 40 to 50 different pheromonal compounds. So that means that they do a blend of scents, right? And so they are communicating constantly through scent. These are a few of them, but we could do a really deep scientific, cool study on bee pheromones. These are a couple that I think are important for new beekeepers in their first year to be aware of. First is the queen mandibular pheromone. It signals the queen's presence. It stabilizes the colony. It tells them everything's okay. It's created in the queen's jaw. There's also the Nasanov pheromone. This is what the bees are fanning when you see them. They stick their little butts up in the air and they fan their wings. They're sending out the Nasanov pheromone to say, come here, mom's here, right? They use it also during swarming and it helps orient the bees to the hive entrance. It's made in the dorsal side of the worker's abdomen. There's also the alarm pheromone that some of you will get to smell if you're working bees with me because when it happens, it smells like bananas and it's very obvious. And so it's helpful to be with another beekeeper that kind of knows what they're looking for in the smell so that they can point it out to you. And it signals defense. And so when we get banana-y, I'm kind of done in the colony unless I'm like quickly trying to wrap something up, like feeding, or you want to be in and out. You don't, because once that banana pheromone, that alarm pheromone goes off, the whole apiary smells it. So not only have you set off your one colony, it's a high likelihood that you have also alerted the other colonies in the area that danger is near. So you don't want to set it off, right? You want to go, and how do you not set it off? You don't squish bees, you don't kill bees, you don't come in hot, moving around fast, talking loud. You're coming in slow, you're moving slow, and it's just you start to become part of their landscape. I have good friends that work bees very slow, and they do that much better than I do. So it has been a process, a part of the spiritual side of beekeeping for me to slow down. I don't like to go slow. I like to go fast, So beekeeping has helped me to just be in their rhythm, right? Instead of my rhythm or my objectives. So the alarm pheromone is created near the sting shaft and or the head. This is a good image for the anatomy of a worker bee. If you're going through your master beekeeper testing, you need to know some of this, right? The bees have a forewing and a hind wing on both sides. This is their thorax, right? This is their abdomen, and this is their head. So if you just have those three parts, head, thorax, abdomen, that's good enough. In their bellies, they have two different bellies. They have a honey crop or a honey stomach, and this is her tongue. So this is where this tongue can both suck and expel. And so she's going to pull nectar in here. It's going to ride in her honey crop, not in her stomach, but in a separate pouch in her belly that she's going to put enzymes in as she's flying back to the colony, right? And so then she's going to use that honey in the honey crop and give it back to her sisters through this tongue. And the sister is going to deal with the nectar that's been brought back to the kitchen, right? So the pollen comb, you'll see that on their hind legs. We call it pollen pants when you can see their pollen on their little hind legs there. You know, the heart is back here. Interesting, right? So, yeah, we'll learn about the Johnston's organ and their antenna. We'll learn about their eyes. We'll do a deeper dive into the anatomy, but this is a good start. If you just have head, thorax, and abdomen, you're good for now, okay? And if you know that they have two different stomachs, one is a honey crop for just for carrying honey, right? So, this is the end, and then we're going to get into the swarm catching part, which I think is going to be a lot of fun for you guys. So here we're going to talk about beeswax and propolis. So beeswax is a living architecture. It takes bees have to eat 6 to 8 pounds of honey. So what is that, like 6 to 8 frames of honey? They have to eat that much to make 1 pound of beeswax. So when you're buying beeswax in 1 pound or 1 ounce, think about the incredibly, like, it's very metabolically expensive to eat a bunch of honey and then make wax. So we want to leave their home in structure as long as we can. I don't want the bees to like make fresh comb and then I'm going to go destroy that comb for my personal use. A lot of people like honey on honeycomb. I do harvest honey on honeycomb for one person, and it's my neighbor in his 80s who helped me get started in beekeeping, and he gets the first of the season. And but that's it. I don't like the idea of selling it that way. I don't mind the idea of doing a small production if there's a certain reason. Maybe I'll have some seasonal honeycomb. But more often, I'd rather be able to extract it like in an extractor, save the comb, and then use the comb later. We can't do that with our top bars because we're crushing and straining our honey, right? And so we're basically taking all of that wax. Now, the beekeeper can reuse that wax for other things like the swarm traps. They can use the wax to help the bees again. But we can also use it for personal use. We can make candles. We can make lip balms. We can do, there's a lot of different things like boot balms. We can do spoon butter stuff. We can do salves for our wood products. Like we can, beeswax, man. I just got back from New Mexico and I collected a bunch of seeds. It's like seed time of the year out there. And I'm going to try to grow some creosote, chaparral plant. And I'm going to try to put some of those dried leaves in some of my beeswax candles because I just love the smell. It smells like desert rain to me. And I'm going to see what that does. But I love just pure beeswax. It smells like complete heaven. I'm going to show you how I deal with it. But from a bees' point of view, it's their house and it's expensive to make, right? It is antibacterial, it's stable, it requires a heavy nectar flow. So if you are trying to stimulate your bees to make wax, you're going to be feeding them a 1-to-1 sugar to water solution, and that's weight or volume. It's 1-to-1. This is where the wax glands comes out. One of your quizzes on the Master Beekeeper exam, or content that you're supposed to know at least, is how many wax glands are on the bee's belly there. And there's 8. So there's 8. All right. And they come out in these little sheets. And then another bee will come get those sheets and chew them up and spit them out and start to form what they want to make their home with. Okay. So this is my backyard. This is beautiful comb. Yours may not look like that. I had a situation that I needed to move the frames out. So you do want to rotate your frames out every couple of years because they get really dark and nasty, and the bees don't like to live in that. The bees in nature, usually their absconsion rate, according to Dr. Seeley, is every 5 years. So they also want new fresh comb, right? So if you're using old comb to try to attract bees, it's probably not going to be as good as you hoped, right? So you do want to kind of cycle the comb out. So I was cycling the comb out here. You can cut it up however you want. Get a really cheap paint mesh bag. You can get them in bulk on Amazon or Home Depot or places like that. You can buy 10 or 20 of them. Put your wax in there, get your crock pot on low. Don't turn it on high and leave it on overnight or it'll explode in your garage. Ask me how I know, right? So you're gonna put this little bundle in your crock pot. And then once it melts, you're gonna take the paint bag full of like the debris, right? And it'll have bee legs and all kinds of stuff in it, right? You're gonna take that out. You may have some project you want to do with it. You could use it as a fire starter, but that's out. And now all that's left in your pot is going to be your wax and the water. And then you're going to let that cool completely. And the next day is, for me, is my process. You'll get this beautiful wax puck on top. And so you can do this process a couple of times if you want it to be cleaner, prettier, more pure. It just depends on what you're using it for. If I'm using it for beauty products, I'm going to get it as clean as I can. If I'm using it just to roll on plastic foundation frames to attract more bees in, then I'm not as concerned about filtering it through multiple times, right? So it just kind of depends. But gosh, it smells so good. And if you have to be careful, like doing it outside, you will attract bees and they will fly in there and they will die and you will be sad, and you'll get hit. So this is more of an inside project or a screened porch project. But once you get this cranked up, the bees smell it and they go to it. And that should show you how effective, you can be by putting fresh hot wax on your foundation or in your swarm traps. Okay, propolis is the other one. It's part of the hive's immune system. The bees collect it from resin in trees. They use it to seal cracks. So in the cold time, like right now, this cold time of year where there's little holes throughout your colony, they're going to use that propolis to, seal the cracks. This is where the bugs get. So I get all kinds of questions. Do you have propolis tincture? Well, I mean, maybe I'll release some. I'm using the propolis that I make, the tincture for me, but I don't want like other propolis tinctures because it's where the bugs are. And I'm not like, I'm not a total germaphobe, but I want to see what's going on. If you have collected some nasty propolis with a bunch of pests in there, I don't want to be spraying that on my throat or my kids' throats, right? So I'm a little bit more weird about propolis than maybe the other beekeepers. So make your own decisions there. Propolis is sterile. The bees use it to mummify the intruders. I'm sparing you from the gross pictures. Like there's a lot of famous pictures of bees that have mummified the rats or mice that have gotten into their colonies or the beetles that have gotten into their colonies. The propolis has strong antimicrobial properties. The way you make a tincture basically is you chip off the propolis and you put it in alcohol, right? A strong alcohol, and you shake it every other day or every day and start to get the properties out of it, and you strain the chunky bits out, and then you have a tincture. Don't use this for medical purposes. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying collectively through the folklore medicine, this is what works for sore throats. So it functions like an immune shield to the colony, but then also to us, okay? For swarms, this is what we're excited about this week. A swarm is a colony's way to reproduce. That's their goal. The bee's goal is to reproduce and to swarm. So if we're constantly suppressing that, it can be an immune downer. We want our colonies to swarm sometimes at my apiary, in my management practice. I think it's a healthy response. Do I want to catch that swarm sometimes? Yeah, I do. Do I want it to go out and be healthy in the world and make other healthy colonies sometimes? Yeah, I do. So this is part of my philosophy through regenerative beekeeping, right? Not every beekeeper practices this way. So you'll come up with your own process, what's best for you. But a swarm is basically when a colony gets really crowded, they've grown, their numbers are bigger, their queen is doing well, they're outgrowing their space, and they're like, okay, it's time to basically spread our seed somewhere else. So the old queen and 50 to 60%, 70% of the colony will leave with the old queen. Before they leave, the colony, the part of the colony that's staying put will develop a new queen. They do that through what they feed a new egg. So they have chosen 6 or 8 queen cells to turn into queens. This half will go on out into the world. This is what you'll see. So there's an old queen in here, right? And so when beekeepers get called on swarm calls, we know that we're picking up an old queen, that the new healthy one is back there somewhere, right? And so it's important that you consider requeening these swarms. You also need to consider the genetics. In our area, we have a lot of bees that are Africanized or have Africanized genetics. And so it's irresponsible to take a swarm and to just not care what it does. If you take a swarm and it's like a very aggressive, difficult, hard colony, not because it's hot, not because it's windy, but you're having a problem with bees that are really coming in and attacking, right? Like this is a situation where you want to go ahead and consider requeening. So you have to have a certain responsibility when you're working with swarms. But this is as calm as they're ever going to be. So this is very simple. You walk up with a box, has some drawn comb in it. You scoop them in there, make sure the queen's in there. You'll see some of the girls fanning. You go home with it. Right. A swarm is a great call to get. It's usually a simple thing to catch. I have had a swarm evade me, so it's not always simple. But when they're doing that, when they're taking half their colony and going on a new adventure, 75% of them will fail. So as the beekeeper, you're like, you're going to die anyway. I'm helping you. Am I getting in the way of a process? Like you have some considerations to make. After a swarm leaves, let's see, the virgin queens will emerge. So the first one out is going to be the one to kill the other queens. So the surviving queen will go on her mating flight. Again, maybe a couple of them. She's going to mate with 12 to up to 50 drones over the couple of days, and she's going to come back and start laying. And so you'll know if you're looking at a colony that has swarmed, if she's come back and is laying, right, that's going to be a really fun colony to observe over time and see what she does in there. So setting the swarm traps, they look different. They have different there's a whole lot of way you can catch a swarm in a bucket. I've caught swarms in a lot of different things. But what the bees are really looking for something, and again, we have Dr. Seeley to thank for this research. They're looking for a container that's 40 liters, which is about the volume of a 10 frame Lang box. So I do have a really old 10 frame Lang box that I use as a swarm trap. They're looking for a teeny tiny entrance, preferably lower on the cavity. They're not looking for the entrance up top or on the side. They're looking for something down here. This makes it easy to defend, right? The bees want something that's 10 to 15 feet high. The beekeeper doesn't want to climb that high up, so they're looking for something that's maybe 6 to 8 feet high. So we'll get the ladders out when we start to collect, when we start to set up our swarm traps. So you just have to do what's practical and safe for you, but the research shows they do want something a little higher up. They want it to be dry. They don't want drafts. They don't want leaks. They want solid walls. And they want it to smell like bees. So you want to put like a frame of old brood comb in there or freshly waxed something in there. You can take slum gum, which is all your gross old funky wax, melt it down and paint that in there. But yeah, Seeley's experiments showed us that used equipment, that smell of bees dramatically increases the acceptance over brand new fresh wood that's freshly painted, right? They're like, oh yeah, somebody had success here. We want to go here. You can use lemongrass oil in your swarm traps. It mimics the Nasanov pheromone. You can use Swarm Commander. I have done both, and I overdo things. So learn from me. You just need a tiny amount. You don't need to have to smell it. The bees can smell it, right? This is something nice to have in your swarm kit, the Swarm Commander. Okay. So what are they looking for? They're looking for something on the edge. They're looking for a tree line that has access to food. It's really simple, right? There is a whole class we could do on the bee line and following the bee line. Where are they going? What are they looking for? The timing, you want to set your traps 2 to 3 weeks before your local swarm season starts. Maybe we're late for that for me. I don't know. Once we start getting swarm calls, I start getting worried that I'm missing out on the action, and then I go set some traps, right? So you'll find your own timing with that. But Dr. Seeley showed us that the swarm site selection is, again, democratic. They're making a vote on it. They vote through the waggle dances, and the best spot gets consensus, and they go there. So when you provide a cavity or a box, a swarm box that matches those preferences that they have shown us, right? The 40 liters, the small entrance, the entrance at the bottom that's elevated, that's dry, that smells like bees, you're giving the Bee Scouts what they're looking for. They are biologically wired to choose that. So you're setting yourself up for success. Bees cast multiple swarms per colony, so it's called after swarming when this happens. The first swarm that they cast is called the primary swarm, and every swarm after that is the after swarm. So sometimes they'll do 3 or 4 in a strong season. They'll cast 3 or 4 swarms. I had a colony last year that was like that. It just kept growing up, and I would take a split every time it was like about to swarm. I'd take a split, meaning they would show me they were about to swarm, and instead of letting them go do that, I took out and made a top bar nuke for clients, right? So I just had a really prolific top bar last year. It's not the same every year, you know. I did let some of them go, and I didn't feel bad about it. It wasn't like, oh, bad beekeeper, you missed the opportunity to get a swarm. It's like, no, it's an expression. It's a healthy purge. It's something that they hormonally want to do, right? So the workers regulate how many swarms the crew will give off. The reason that they want to do a whole lot of swarms is to spread their genes and their survival odds. And so each additional swarm, though, they get a little bit weaker. So maybe you cast 4 swarms in a year. That was my experience last year for sure. My biggest, strongest colony that gave and gave and gave ended up like puttering down. So they're okay. She's still in production. She made it through the winter freezes that we had. They still have honey stores, but they had honey stores and it went down dramatically within a week. So I had a colony that had, I don't know, 8, 10 frames of honey, and a week later had a frame and a half. And so I started feeding that colony because we're not quite to the part of the year where we can count on the blooms. They're not foraging and they're a little bit frantic. They're going out on a nice day and not finding as much as they would like. So there are times like that when I will bridge the gap and feed them. Okay, is a swarm dangerous? Not usually. They don't have honey to protect. They don't have baby bees that they're worried about defending. Before they leave, they're going to gorge on honey, which is also something that you can see, like, oh, wow, like half their honey stores are gone, right? So it makes them physiologically less likely to sting because their bellies are full of honey. Doesn't mean they can't and won't. It just means they're less likely to. Doesn't mean that you walk up to a swarm and do whatever you want. I got called on a swarm call and like the people were like up close looking at it. I'm like, okay, I know they're calm, but well, they won't bother me. They're not bothering me. I'm like, they won't until they do, and then they'll all be on you, you know? And so I would prefer people not watch our swarm calls that are not in protective equipment, right? That are not in suits. Some people like to watch on the porch or behind, you know, I'll let them get in their cars and watch and film. They can do whatever they want. I am insured. I think you should be insured if you're doing these swarm calls. I can recommend Texas providers for you guys if you're interested in that. But is a swarm dangerous? No, but it doesn't mean that you just get to, you know, do whatever you want and act however. You still need to move slow. You still need to take precautions. If you're using your smoker, right, you are telling the colony like something is up here, you're masking the smells, and you may just send them on their journey. So I try to not use a smoker when I'm picking up a swarm. Sometimes I'll use a little bit of sugar water spray to cover their wings and so that they're less likely to fly. I don't do it in a cruel way. I do it in a way that's like, okay, let's calm the airwaves down and get them in their box. You want to go as early in the morning as possible before they're flying, right? Because once they start flying, you're going to collect your swarm, and then the people that have called you for help are going to say, hey, like there's still bees coming in, right? So you want to get the most amount of bees possible, and the best chance you have to do that is early in the morning if it's a true swarm, right? Like they're going to want to leave like at the brunch hour. Brunch time, they're like, all right, we're going to our next spot. So they can sting if they are provoked. If you got allergies, you need to stay away, of course. Don't do it without protective gear. Most swarms are really calm and fun to play with. So they look really dramatic, but it's usually the gentlest phase of a colony's life cycle. How long do they stay in one place? Typically a day. I've seen them stay up to 3 or 4 days. There was one at the rodeo last year that it was taller than my truck. I had a ladder in the bed of my truck. I had the box, and I was winging they were in a branch of a tree. I was winging it down. I was hoping like they was getting them into the box, and they just wouldn't stay. I had Swarm Commander in there. I couldn't get it done. And it was during the fair. There were a lot of people out. So this year we are going to activate a fair beekeeping squad that is going to help with swarms, because the fair attracts a lot of bees. There's a lot of sticky like cokes and funnel cakes and stuff in the trash that's interesting to bees that are swarming that time of year. So we're going to do it a little bit differently this year. But they'll stay in one spot for a little bit of time before they're moving on. So what are they doing there? Again, they're evaluating. The scout bees are going out, coming back, doing a dance, saying, this is what we think, we need to move this way. Or if things have changed, we need to move this way. If the weather is bad, they're going to stay clustered longer. Okay, where are you going to move them? This is important. So now we have a swarm, but what are we going to do with it? The distance matters. So if you have put a swarm box up in an existing apiary, you have some considerations, right? Forager bees memorize the location of their hive or where you have set them up in the swarm box using landmarks, sun position, and their spatial memory. So if you move them just a little short distance, they're just going to keep going back to that swarm box and cluster there. So you're going to see the bees returning there for a couple of days. So some best practices, you're going to go to a swarm box that you have bees in at night, and you're going to close the entrance. When they're done flying, you're going to close the entrance. Then you're going to move the box where you want it to go. You're going to keep the entrance reduced, and then you're going to you're going to move them into the box that you want them to be in. Keep that entrance reduced, and you're going to give them some like orienting pieces of organic matter. Like you can put some sticks up or some rocks up. You're going to give them something else to orient to. Some people will put like stickers on their hives or draw different designs on their hive boxes. But you're going to give them something so that when they fly out for the first time, they're like, oh, okay, we are now the 3 rock hive. We know where to come back to, right? But if you just keep them really close to the other boxes, you're not going to have as much success as if you go ahead and move them further out. The 3 feet or 300 feet or whatever that thing is, that myth has been debunked by many beekeepers, including myself with my own experiments. But yeah, things I wish, like the times that this has failed for me, I have had them too close to their parent colony. Okay. And I wished I would have like rotated the entrance a different way and not worried so much about the entrance direction. I wish I would have done some things to force a reorientation, if you will. Okay, so that's the end of today. We are going to set swarm traps and feed this week. If you want to come with me, let me know. Next time, so we're doing every other Monday, and we're alternating 10 a.m. and noon. This was to accommodate as many schedules as possible. I know you're not all going to make it each time, and that's okay. But next time we're going to become a bee veterinarian, right? Just what you always wanted. We're going to talk about honeybee nutrition and why that's important with our soil health. We're going to identify pests and diseases. This is not fun, but you have to know this as a beekeeper. This is how you're going to know when your colony is failing and what to do about it. And I'll have some, we'll go through the gamut of what beekeepers do from treatment free to treatments, and then I'll tell you my best practices and what I have done, and then you'll be able to experiment in your own colonies. So we're going to talk about feeding bees along with bee nutrition, and I'm going to get into queens, like I said earlier. And if it's time to make splits, we'll go on some field trips. We can visit some of my friends that are commercial beekeepers and watch their splits. We can make splits in my yards. We can make splits in your yards. But this is dependent on the bees. So maybe we'll do that early March. Maybe it'll be later March. But this is what you have to look forward to. So that's my slide that tells me I am done with the presentation for today. So I am just seeing the chat. So thank you for the questions in the chat. Do I know if anybody has studied the survival rates of the primary swarm versus the after swarm? Are they lumped into that 75% failure rate? Actually, I don't know. So we should look that up. I bet that is in Dr. Seeley's research. And yes, this other question is you recently read that they need a 2 square inch entrance for a swarm. Do you think that's too large? No. Bee space, as a reminder, is 3/8 of an inch. So they will make it smaller, right? They will use propolis to make the entrance smaller. Um, but you can just experiment. What I like to use are those discs that you can, rotate, and those discs are great because they have a queen excluder, they have air holes if you're moving them, they have the little circles so that they can get in and out of it. Those are awesome on the swarm traps. Okay. All right. Let me stop the recording so we can honor our time. And I really appreciate you guys for coming and learning about bees. I think you're awesome. I love the beekeepers in our community. If I can help you, I will. Please ask me questions. Please let me know how I can support you if you're starting your business. I've learned a lot. I'm happy to give you the ideas, to help you grow and to help you be sustainable with what you're doing. Beekeeping can be a big money pit the first couple of years. And so, there may be some areas where you're spending more than you had in mind. So just budget a little bit extra for things like the swarm traps or the swarm commander or the things that you didn't know that you were going to need because you want to play with this stuff. But ultimately, right, let's go back, let's journal this week and let me know why you're a beekeeper. Think about it. Ask yourself, right? Get in meditation, get in prayer, and really understand what you're doing here. Because once you understand that, you will be completely unstoppable. The world will not know what to do with you. Once you have a beekeeper on a mission for something, you're part of something greater. You're part of a bigger community. You're making a difference. So keep going. I'm really proud of you guys, and I'm here to help. All right, I'm going to stop, and we'll see you next time.